All right, everyone, thanks so much for joining us today for our virtual business workshop for August. The topic is Business Values. Is your business living up to its promise? We are excited to have you all here today. My name is Melissa Emden. I'm the Programs and Education Director at ALCC. So I'm going to go ahead and just go over some housekeeping items before we start. And I mentioned this before we started the recording, but we're going to go ahead and mute everyone. We are recording today's session, so we will make sure we have a good recording to send out to everyone afterwards. Today's session, as our presenter will get, as she gets started here, our session today is very interactive, so make sure you have something available to kind of take notes or be able to kind of interact with the session. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our presenter and we'll get going. Michelle Gonzalez is a bilingual workshop facilitator for Outgrow Your Garage, committed to fostering community empowerment through education and entrepreneurship. In her role at Outgrow Your Garage, Michelle leverages her bilingual skills to create inclusive and accessible workshops that empower individuals from diverse backgrounds to thrive as entrepreneurs. Outside of Outgrow Your Garage, Michelle is a bodyworker and artist dedicated to personal growth and the healing arts, continuing to explore ways that these passions intersect to foster holistic empowerment and well-being. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Michelle. Just one more housekeeping item. If you have any questions during the session, we are going to be kind of interactive, so I'm sure there'll be times to kind of interact and take yourself off of mute. But if you do have questions as Michelle's kind of going through some things, go ahead and use the chat. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Michelle.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melissa. Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's workshop. As Melissa mentioned, my name is Michelle Gonzalez. Please do use the chat, and if you guys do feel comfortable at any point when interacting with the workshop, so when we're participating, feel free to turn your cameras on if you would like to. That way we can see your faces. It can be a little bit more personal. If you guys can't, that's totally fine. That's just something I usually recommend for people. Okay, so Melissa, thank you for going over the housekeeping. So you did that part. In the meantime, if you guys don't mind introducing yourselves in the chat, you can type your name. I know if there's multiple people, you can type their names and the business name that you're coming with. And then one word, and you guys can, as a group, you guys can collaborate with this one. One word describing your ideal client experience. In the meantime, I'll introduce the workshop real quick. Today we will be focusing on empowering you to identify practical tools and evaluate that align with your business values and daily operations. Business values are something that can be very individualistic. So this is why this workshop is going to be highly interactive. There's going to be a worksheet that I will also be sharing with you on the chat very briefly. And then hopefully this can be something that you can take along with you after the workshop as well. Because this is a practice that today is going to be a lot of reflection and a lot of the practicing, but this is something that you can even take a little bit farther. And implementing it even more frequently in your business practice, and also even with other areas such as like with your team, your clientele relationships, etc. So hopefully by the end of this workshop, you will be able to identify your core personal and business values using practical assessment tools, understand how values translate into client promises and brand identity, evaluate gaps between stated values and actual business practices, and develop actionable strategies to better align operations with values. At the end, I will also share some tools to create a personal action plan for authentic value-driven business practices as well. So on the link, it's going to be in the chat. And that's something that you guys can feel free to print out later on. Either way, a lot of what is on the worksheet will be on the presentation. So if you just have a pen and paper and we just want to start with that, because we're just going to be starting with like 3 things just to practice. And then, of course, if you want to kind of like dive in deeper, if you have more values you want to look into and interact with, then I think the worksheet will be very helpful for that. And awesome. Welcome, Tim, Izzy, Caitlin, and Elena. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. And Chuck, who just joined us. Okay.
Yeah, we did have Chuck just joined us as well. So I think he's just getting all set up here.
Cool. Chuck, feel free to introduce yourself as well in the chat if you would like to. So Melissa already introduced me, but I'm a big advocate for education that empowers and helps community growth. I'm a community educator. I've been doing community business workshops for different nonprofits, including with Outgrow Your Garage and other businesses. I think that there's a big gap in just business education, of course, because this is not primarily provided in our public education. So I always think that it's really awesome that associations and different groups can be able to facilitate these extensions to our communities to help continue foster community and economic development. So this is why I joined Outgrow Your Garage. Our mission is to get more businesses through their first growth stage and into stable business revenue. And the way that we do this is by teaching operational skills that anyone can implement. Okay, so we're going to be starting with something that I call the promise audit. Here, feel free to use the chat to write if there's any reflections that you would like to share. But here we're going to be building a little bit of schema, right? Schema is kind of just that reflection, understanding where we're starting from. That way everything can be applied a lot more easy. So we're building that foundation by asking ourselves, what do you tell clients during initial consultations? What promises are on your website and marketing? And what do clients expect based on your communications? So here we're already we're starting to scratch that surface, understanding what are already those business values that we are already trying to communicate with our clientele. Perhaps we haven't really created any. There's a lot of businesses that in their first stage of business, they focus very much just on the mission and just getting their businesses out there. A lot of the times values is something that's overlooked by a lot of businesses, and that's totally okay. Maybe you can even start, if you're in that stage, maybe you can start by thinking about those values that you would like to start implementing. Okay. So why do core values matter? Essentially, values are the silent drivers behind every decision in your business. When they're strong and aligned, your business is going to feel consistent and trustworthy. When they're weak or misaligned, customers are going to sense that disconnection, even if they can't really put words into it. There's this idea behind kind of like values being your why, right? Your values basically are going to be that thing that connect to the core of your client. A lot of people make purchase decisions. They were hiring decisions very logically, but we can't ignore also just the human part of that as well. So values are that connection between kind of like the logical sense, which is pricing, efficiency, etc. But then there's going to also just be the core connection, which will speak farther than what the product does. So if it's communicating who you are and what you stand for, some of the examples that we can come up with is, are you someone supporting sustainability, right? So sustainability might mean that you know, if you tell me you're a sustainable brand, I'm going to imagine that you're a business that is that supports chemical-free environment, who is going to look for alternative practices that are perhaps not so common in the industry, that speak to those who don't want harsh chemicals, pesticides, etc. in their environment or in their food. Now, if you're more cost oriented, and I am someone who your client is going to be someone who's more cost oriented, then they probably won't really care about the ingredients, or if you're a chef, for example, or they won't care about the processes. They probably will be more lenient towards the core idea, which is um, how how can you provide the best service at the budget that they're looking for, particularly. Okay. So going farther into what are core values. Core values are not marketing fluff. They're essentially the DNA of your business. They shape, and this is going to be shaping your daily operations, how you also respond through tough times, and how your clients perceive your integrity. I have seen businesses in the past, and I will use my industry, for example. So I'm a massage therapist. So I have seen massage therapy industries that, for example, during COVID, because the economy, the economy fluctuated so much, there was a lot of inflation. Of course, just like many other businesses, they had to raise their prices. One of the reasons why they had to raise their prices is because they wanted to provide better paying wages to their massage therapists. So they wanted to be more competitive in the industry. One of their core values is their community. So they would send these mass emails to a lot of their members in their industry, in their business, because they were a membership business. And they basically were very transparent and communicated, this is what we're doing, we're raising our prices, and this is why, so we can continue to follow our values. Did they lose business? They did not. They actually hit their 1 million mark, I believe, in 2021 or 2022. So if anything, their growth, their operations actually continue to grow. So this is why, because their values, they're so strong in their values, and they communicate their values so much that they could guarantee that a lot of the people that were probably members with them had the same values, and so they held the same integrity and the same commitment to supporting this business. So let's start with a self-reflection. So this is outside of our business. This is outside of our work life. And we're going to think about when was the last time you felt a business truly lived up to its promise, right? Because we have to also remember that we're not only business owners or business managers, etc., but we also have a life. We're also those customers for other companies. So when we think of ourselves from that perspective, right? So perhaps you shop, I don't know where you guys did mention where you guys were, but like, for example, in Denver, there's Trader Joe's and there's Whole Foods, but then there's King Supers, right? So like, these are just the common day-to-day activities that everyone will probably be buying from to buy their groceries. So think about your own lifestyle as to what you invest in, and think about when a business that you have invested in or that you have spent money in truly lived up to its promise, and what did they do that stood out? And you guys can feel free to participate if there's anyone who would like to share.
Okay.
Can you hear us okay?
Yes, we can.
I would say one example for me is Chewy, the pet app, whatever, Shopee. They're just, they have great customer service, and they really don't give you any qualms about returning stuff or whatnot.
Awesome. So they're very loyal to the customer experience.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. And Chuck, the question is the one on the screen. When was the last time you felt the business truly lived up to its promise? And what did they do to stood out? In the meantime, I'll give one quick example. It's something that to me showed their promise towards community. So I went to these hot springs that are out in San Luis Valley in Colorado, and I left my scarf, right? Something so simple. Usually, if you leave your items, especially during like a hot springs place or something, they in something so minimal, they probably will discard it. They'll probably put in the lost and found. But they took the time to reach out it was on the reservation once under my friend's name, and they reached out and they personally mailed my scarf back to me. So that to me, and I can already see that one of their values is community, right? It's that holding of integrity. So that it was something so simple, but that already just tells you who you're doing business with. Okay, so Chuck said service-based companies that communicate well with text message updates, photos, and updates throughout. I agree. Thank you. Okay, so our first activity for today, we will be, which is on the worksheet, but I will actually have the examples that are on the worksheet on the screen. But I will first give you guys the instructions. So if you have pen and paper, you can start writing these down once we get started. But we're first going to be circling the words that resonate with you personally. Then do the same for your business. So first we're looking at our personal values, and then we're going to be looking at our business values. Once we narrow these both lists down, we're going to be starting with 10 for each, and then we're going to narrow them to 3 for each. We will take note whether those personal and business values overlap or if there's a gap. So these are just some examples of some of the most common values that are out there. If there's more that you would like to add to it, or some that you're thinking about, or that you currently have for your business, feel free to just note it on your paper, and we will be sharing. So once you share, you can go ahead and add that in as well. So as I mentioned, we're highlighting or circling 10 values that resonate with you personally. You will narrow them down to 3 personal values first, and then you will do the same, so another 10, and then narrow it down to 3, but for business values.
So these first are the personal values first.
Yes, so we're using the same list for personal and for business, but we will reflect first on personal and then business. And I already did the activity myself too, so I will participate with you guys too. I will give you guys 2 more minutes, but if anyone does finish beforehand, please feel free to start sharing. Alrighty, who would like to start sharing? What are 3 personal values and 3 business values that you narrowed down?
I'll go.
Yes, go ahead.
For personal, I put authenticity, fairness, and trust. And for business, I put sustainability, adaptability, and integrity.
Great. And did you notice any gaps or any similarities with your personal and business values?
I would say integrity and authenticity seemed kind of like they were in the same world, as far as like personal and business. So yeah, that's one that I noticed that kind of overlapped for me.
Wonderful, thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, and Chuck shared for business, growth, community, and excellence, personal, honesty, leadership, and passion. Chuck, would you like to share some connections that you found between your business values and your personal values? And you can share in the chat too. That's totally fine. When I did this activity, for example, I came up with authenticity, creativity, and trust for personal. And it just so happened that they actually, I couldn't narrow it down to 3. I had so many for the business. But they did, the authenticity, creativity, and quality were the ones that I think overlapped for me as well. You had more business values that related like leadership, passion, integrity, and honesty. Yeah, and I would argue too that part of leadership is having integrity and honesty too. And passion does make a great leader. So you're on an excellent path. So we're going to continue for the sake of time. So for this next part, now that we can evaluate what our values are, we can start noticing that they become very real once clients experience them as promises, right? How does this happen? So your values are why you exist, and your promises was what clients expect. So there's something that kind of just needs to happen in between them that needs to be translated. So for example, and this is going to be the example that we're going to use for this activity. Transparency. transparency might become something like no hidden fees ever, right? So we're going to be doing something similar with the values that we already have. For each of our values, we're going to translate into a concrete client-facing promise. So as we mentioned with the example, there's the example of transparency. The client promise, so what do clients experience through this? This is going to be fixed pricing perhaps. And the example in practice, so what it's confronting them, not confronting them, but what is facing them, it's something like no hidden fees ever. So feel free to take some time to take the three. So your three business ones. If you find that there's some of the business ones that kind of just correlate a lot with your personal, feel free to just summarize it. Just choose one word, or just choose those three words that you just have for your business as well. And you're going to start by writing them in your own piece of paper if you want, under core values. And think about what the client promised. So what do clients experience through that promise? So if you chose integrity, what does that mean? And what would that look like as an example in practice? Do you guys have any questions about this next activity? Feel free to ask in case it wasn't clear. Okay. So I'll give you guys about 3 to 4 minutes. Okay. Who would like to start with an example? You don't have to do all three. You can just bring one up. where you evaluate it as your core value, client promise, and example in practice. So I can give an example to start us off. One of my business values was quality. And so my client promise would be to, as a massage in the massage therapy side, is to help them feel whole, right? Their bodies feel all integrated. In the practice of something that I would probably make sure that is communicated, whether it's through my website or marketing, is how all the qualifications that I have. So all the different certifications that I have in different bodywork practices, that will go with that will be communicating that quality or carrying out that quality service. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. So for adaptability, you said that one of our promises is customer solution, and as an example, it would be seats that change with your needs. Okay, I really like how that rhymes. Very poetic. Community, so strength in partnership and community would be the promise, working closely with partners and vendors to achieve finished products. Invitation to DTE events throughout the year. Perfect. Awesome, thank you. So this is to help us analyze and basically break down a little bit farther, because when we values, as you notice, and when you navigate many other businesses who list their values in their companies, for example, in their websites, they seem to just be one word, right? But and those words seem to be more adjectives or nouns. But how do we create them into verbs, right? How do we make them into actions? So this activity is the purpose of that, is for us to truly reflect as to how we're carrying out that process. I actually had one experience. I think it's perfect that it's happened while we're leading this workshop. It was with Columbia Factory, right? Columbia, the store that sells all the outwear. And I think when I was doing this workshop, I was like, let me look at their values, because I had a very negative experience with them. And I noticed that their values was actually doing what was right for the customer. And unfortunately, that was not the experience that I had, right? So as a customer, I could potentially, I'm not that kind of person, but I could potentially go further into letting them know that, like, hey, you're not standing up to your values. So on my side, personally, I probably won't be shopping, at least not in this location that I went to again, because to me, it was very clear that there's no integrity, right? And I think in general, when we're listing values, we need to, although integrity is one of those values, I think just holding integrity regardless of what the values are that we're communicating, that's always going to be very important. Because that's something that will be affecting word of mouth, marketing, reviews, etc. Okay, so we can continue with the gap analysis. So here we're asking ourselves, are we delivering on the promises daily? Where do we fall short? And does our process support our values? So now that we have identified what values and promises that we have for our businesses, we can start to be a little, hold ourselves accountable, right? So where is our business shining and where is our business struggling? I think for these questions, I would suggest you writing them down and even bringing this into your own team meetings, because this is something that we tend to fear to look at our gaps because we see them as failures, but in reality, they're not failures. There's no business that's never going to have any gap or any space for improvement. Even in our own personal lives, in our own personal development, there's always going to be an invitation to improve. So having these questions as reflections, just to take with yourself, can further improve and further cultivate this relationship with these business values that you're trying to build. And if anything, this is why we're here. So the fact that you're already here asking yourself these questions are already a start to that improvement, right? You've already taken the first step, which is the self-analysis and the reflections that we've been doing so far. With what we've done so far, the next activity, we're going to be rating how your business lives up to those promises. 1 being weak, 5 being fully aligned. So from 1 to 5, you can go ahead and number all those 3 values that you've identified, and identify where the gap exists, especially if there's words that are synonyms to each other and maybe one falls short of the other one. Maybe you can ask yourself, where is the gap here, right? Why am I 5 with honesty, but maybe I'm falling only 3 with respect, right? Maybe there's been complaints about respect in the company. Circle 1 to 2 areas to prioritize for change. That will be the next step and what will lead us to the next activity. And if anybody wants to share on the chat, where are you noticing the biggest gap? You can go ahead and do that. I know this is something that is very, I'm forgetting the word. It's very vulnerable, right? It's something that makes us feel a little bit vulnerable when we're asking, especially when we're sharing these. When we do workshops like this, and especially if we're doing it as a team, I think they're very wonderful because vulnerability should not be something we run away from, especially when we can share very openly, because this is what builds community. And especially in an educational space, which is what I personally try to do when I bring these to different communities, is to hopefully build those communities within the classroom. Although I know we only have an hour, but when we share these things, we will notice that perhaps you are not the only business struggling with the same gap, or not the only business succeeding in the same area. So I'll give you guys some time to do this. I'll give you 2 minutes. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the next one. And once we've evaluated this part, so where our gaps are, this is where we can take it further into an action plan of alignment. Understanding this, where these gaps may lie, it will help us understand where we are and where we want to get to, right? That's kind of like how I mentioned in the beginning of the workshop. That's the foundation. For one or two values, we're going to write down what you'll do better to embody them. And you can keep it as specific as you want and as doable as you can. Because I think that doable is very important. We also don't want to set ourselves for failure, right? And we can start to think about what is the process, the system, or the habit that we can start this month to help us embody this value as a company. So the framework that is aligned here, which I will show in the next one, is value leads to promise, leads to current practice, and what the next step is. So if your value is customer care, for example, your promise will probably be, we prioritize every voice. Then the next step will be implementing follow-up surveys. If it's more than one person in your team, then you can even go as far as to taking this into some of your team meetings or right now, or you can just start writing your own ideas as to who or when this can start to be implemented. There's some extra practices that can be done. Like I said, values are something, it's something, you know, like we teach many other workshops. We teach, for example, like job costing breakdowns, client communication, marketing, branding, etc. But values, there's something so personal. It's something a lot more individual, right? That I believe that it has the potential to become a task, a day, maybe not a daily task, but maybe more like a weekly or a monthly task that can be assigned to the team, or just as yourself if you're a business owner for yourself. This then invites the opportunity for self-reflective exercises, right? New age terms would be like journaling. But just having a simple agenda, having flashcards, having different degrees of ways where you can keep yourself accountable throughout the practice of implementing business values, I think will be very important. Just because it can be so overwhelming when we're trying to get from where we are to where we want to be, especially when we identify these gaps. There was a workshop with another company that I did last week, which was about I had an author talk about imposter syndrome, right? And a lot of us, we struggle with perfectionism. So these workshops can be I mentioned before, the vulnerability will come up with that because of the kind of not the imposter syndrome, but because of the perfectionism that we all carry just as innately as human beings. However, we shouldn't run away from that. So having some structures that can help us keep ourselves accountable will be a great starting point. The worksheet is you're more than welcome to share that with your team, to keep that, to print that, to save that, whatever you want to do with that. That would be a great start. But if you do want to continue, I'm going to give you some other practices, which I actually took from different books. There's this book. This is more for like private practices, just because for like doctors, massage therapists, etc. But there was a section in here that I really enjoyed, which talks about the self-reflection. And you can start with, this week I will take the following action to align my business with its values by, right? Or there's even these flashcards activities where you can basically put what's on the screen right now And that can look like the value that you want to embody that week, what that promise is going to look like or that has already been communicated, what the current practice looks like, and then that will inform you what your next step is. So going with the first example that we started with, which is transparency, and this can give you an evaluation of how deep this can go, especially for businesses that are in their growth stage, is if their business value is transparency, and the promise, as we spoke about, was no hidden fees. In the current practice, they're probably going to notice that there's no job costing breakdown. There's extra fees that are adding up, which are keeping customers angry. And there's no actual pricing model. So if they want to do the conjunction of pricing plus material or everything included, and this is not being communicated well on the website. So for a type of business that has this starting point with themselves in their current practice where they're lacking that gap with the value of transparency, maybe the next steps for the next month for them is going to be doing a job costing and pricing model breakdown, and committing to it, because that's another really hard one. And then adding it to the website, communicating with the team, communicating it in their marketing material, and communicating in their website. So this is just an example of the extension of how just a simple word can truly be like there's so much back end that can be happening or can be lacking in this sense. So I invite you all to continue to take this a little bit further in your business practices. And just before wrapping up, we can recap that it is important to understand that values are the foundation of our brand, that promises must be reflected in daily actions, and that the alignment of these values is what's going to create that trust, loyalty, and differentiation in your business. Especially if a customer ever comes up to you and tells you, I see, with the example of sustainability, I see that you have a promise for sustainability. Tell me a little bit more about how you do this. I really liked what Elena shared. So you had the custom solutions, right? So your value is adaptability. And through the custom solutions, you have the example of seeds that change with your needs. So that already, as a client, if I were hiring you, like that already speaks so much to me as to, okay, I don't really need to look at all these different businesses that I've been comparing pricing and services with, because now I understand that you're providing something that will probably be will provide me with the flexibility that I need throughout the different seasons. Okay, so what is next? As you guys know, and if you didn't know, now you know, we continue to have these workshops. We did take a break because of the summer season, but this is the first workshop we're now going to be starting moving forward. So our next workshop is going to be next month, September 2nd. These happen usually the first Tuesday of the month. They're at 11:30 to 12:30 p.m. So just like it happened today, if you would like to register for the next one, I will include the link on the chat, just so you guys can have that information. Some of these workshops are going to be bilingual. So if, for example, for the next workshop, which is client communication, I will be providing the workshop in Spanish as well during the time of 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. The registration link for that one will be the second link coming forward. And of course, there's going to be another one in October. So I will suggest going into the ALCC calendar so you can look ahead and see which of those will resonate with you. Thank you guys so much for interacting with this workshop today. I hope that there was something that you're able to take with you If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us as well at info@outgrowyourgarage.com. You can also follow us on LinkedIn. And of course, if any other questions come up as well, I'm sure Melissa is more than happy to answer those moving forward.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I really appreciate you presenting today. Thanks so much, everyone that joined us today. I really appreciate you being here. I think Michelle covered all the wrap-up information. I will go ahead and send out the link to this the recording of this session, as well as just a brief survey a little bit later today, so watch for that. And I'll also include the links to register for our next sessions if you're interested. We will have these, as Michelle mentioned, every the first Tuesday of every month for the rest of basically into 2026. So we were really excited. Hopefully you can join us for those, and have a great day, everyone.
Have a good one, everyone. Thank you. And thank you,
Thank
Melissa.
you.
And Melissa, I have a question.
Yeah.